So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is another webinar hosted by Geo Solutions, and today we are going to talk about GeoNode 3.0. Before we start with the details about GeoNode, I'm going to provide a brief introduction about Geo Solutions if you are not aware of who we are, and then some logistics about today's webinar. So GeoSolutions was founded in 2006. We have offices in Italy, and since this year we have offices in the US. And we support mainly four products: GeoServer, MapStore, GeoNode, and GeoNetwork. And we have different ways that we can support these products by providing support services, which is whenever you want to tweak your, for example, your server environment or GeoNode or an update or help with the workflows to optimize what you are presenting to your users or to your own organization, then we can provide that type of support, increasing your performance and tweaking the product so it's good for your company. Then we do some deployment subscriptions. So whenever you have a product that is already stable, we can somehow guarantee that if something breaks, we will fix it. We do customized solutions. Not all of the products when they come out of the box, we know they serve the ultimate purpose. So sometimes we need to customize it because you want different views, because you want different categories or something different. So we do that as well, and we provide professional training. And we have about 180 clients around the world, mostly in Europe, but also in North America, and different types of customers, a lot of industry and also international organizations as well as governments. So that gives us a big depth of information, knowledge about different domains that we can better support your needs, either if it is in space or smart cities or open data, emergency response, and so forth. Um, it is very close to our heart to support open source, and that's how the company is built around it. I come from OGC, which I was 10 years there leading the interoperability, or now it's called the innovation program, where we supported open standards, and open source was really, really important for open standards as well. Um, so it's like a continuation of what I believe in supporting the communities where they don't have, for example, resources to get or purchase big licenses, like they can download a product and start using it. Even if it is not tweaked, for example, by experts like us, they can publish them up in not minutes, but maybe days. So this opens a lot of opportunities for people around the world to really share this special data and hopefully improve their lives and save the environment and so forth. So we're big supporters. We're part of OSGeo, members of OGC, and members of USGIF, because we also support the GeoInt community. Our team it has a lead developer, so all these products that I mentioned before, GeoNode, GeoServer, MapStore, and GeoNetwork, we have vast experience in a lot of technologies related to geospatial data, raster vector, spatial databases, OGC protocols, and we have lots of customers where we can and we have experienced and demonstrated that we can have these products in the cloud performing in an incredible way. We are about 25 staff members, mostly we're software engineers, and you can see here some of the lead people in our company. And that's all. So what's going to happen next is that Alessio, Giovanni, Francesco, and maybe others of the project steering committee of GeoNode are going to walk us in what are the major changes of GeoNode 3.0. And please hold your questions until the end. You can use the Q&A in the webinar to post your questions. And then at the end, we're going to leave hopefully 20 minutes for you to interact with them. This is a great opportunity for you to just raise any question, because there is not an opportunity like this when you have experts that are very close to you and you can interact with them. Fortunately, some meetings got canceled this year, so this is a great opportunity for you to do that. So with that, Alessio, I give you the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Luis. Good morning, everyone. Okay, I'm Alessio Fabiani, working for GeoSolutions. Currently, I am one of the lead developers of GeoNode. Sorry, I had a small and I'm a member of the GeoNode PSC. I'm going to quickly provide you some excursus on what is GeoNode and what are the new functionalities of GeoNode 3.0 and 3.1. So what is GeoNode? GeoNode is a web framework based on Python and Django that allow people to basically easily upload and describe and share their geospatial datasets. We usually define GeoNode as a geospatial content management system. That means that basically you don't have to be a GIS expert in order to start publishing your geospatial datasets, because one of the main goals of GeoNode is to provide an easy way to directly upload geospatial datasets into the framework and create maps, and also add some metadata easily and expose also those datasets through the standard OGC protocols. So in a few steps, in most of the cases, you are able to put in place geospatial server and a metadata catalog linked to your geospatial datasets. Of course, GeoNode, it's a sort of, let's say, middle way between a very easy content management system, a standard web content management system, or a desktop GIS like GIS, and a geospatial server or geospatial catalog like GeoServer and GeoNetwork. For obvious reasons, it does not expose all the functionalities that you have on those very specialized instruments, but it tries to provide the most common functionalities to allow non-expert people to deploy their spatial data. Moreover, thanks to the fact that it is developed on top of Django, which is a Python web framework, very, very flexible and very extensible. GeoNode, I would say, allows in an easy way, from a developer point of view, of course, to extend its functionalities and also to customize not only the user interface, but also the backend logic and the middleware logic. So most of the, let's say, common capabilities of GeoNode are the ability to upload geospatial datasets directly from the web UI, of course, with some limitations. You cannot, of course, upload terabytes of data from the UI, but at least you can upload relatively standard geospatial datasets directly through the web UI directly, and allow users to do that. On the other side, GeoNode exposes a set of management commands, let's say utility scripts and APIs, to allow developers to upload also huge data sets into the framework. Moreover, GeoNode implements this metadata layer, which currently exposes the standard ISO metadata fields, and allows the users of the system to directly edit the metadata through the web user interface. And those metadata are then exposed also through the OGC catalog web services and REST APIs in order to provide search and discovery capabilities from other OGC compliant systems. GeoNode also allows people to create thematic maps. So you are able to add your overlays to maps, change the styles, select which style you want to show. But recently, GeoNode provides also a lot of very advanced functionalities that we are going to see later during the presentation. As I said before, there is also the possibility to edit the styles of the overlays directly from the web user interface. And also, which is very, very important, GeoNode provides a very granular permission system that allows the owners of the data and the administrator to define very precisely who is allowed to view, download the data and the metadata, who is able to edit the data and edit the styles, and who is able to add their data to the maps. Also, you can choose the permissions for single users or groups of users. Those same restrictions are propagated to the geospatial backend. So this is not only something that is done through the web framework, let's say, but somehow those permissions are reflected to the geospatial service, so that even if you try to access directly the geospatial service, the same permissions will be applied to the geospatial datasets. And finally, a very, very important thing is that GeoNode automatically exposes geospatial datasets that you upload to the framework through the OGC standard protocol. So the web map service, WFS for vectorial data, WCS for raster data, and catalog service for metadata. So that basically you can link your catalog of spatial data sets to other systems, other services which are OGC compliant. Very quickly, this is the release history of GeoNode. So in February, we had the GeoNode 2.10.2 release, and in May 2020, so more or less 1 month ago, a bit more, we released finally GeoNode 3.0, which is based on Python 3 and Django 2.2, and the last release of the 2.10 train, which is GeoNode 2.10.4. So we usually also organize or try to organize GeoNode code sprints and GeoNode summits around the world. Unfortunately, this year it won't be possible to organize the GeoNode summit physically, but we are looking to try to organize an online GeoNode summit. Not sure exactly when, probably towards September or something. Anyway, stay up to date by looking at that site, summit.geonode.org. The community around GeoNode is very high and also is growing every year. And among the stakeholders, let's say the users, of this framework, we have also very important names like the United Nations, the World Bank, which, by the way, started the project a few years ago. OpenGeo, of course, with sponsor the projects. Resilience Academy, recently also Almaviva, for example, Mapstand, CNR, and you can see a lot of names here, but there are many more. Also, the community around the open source project is growing, and currently seems to be very stable. So that guarantees, let's say, a certain stability of the project, and also it guarantees the fact that the project is moving forward by not only fixing bugs continuously, but also by introducing new functionalities along time. Okay, this is a very quick list of the main contributors this time, and some numbers about the forks of the project, number of issues, pull requests, and so on, languages supported, and so on. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at the very new functionalities that you can find on GeoNode 3. So I won't go through the usual, let's say, functionalities of GeoNode, but I'm going to present only the new things that are available from 2020. First of all, this is the releases that have been done until now. So as you can see, the release 3.0 has been, the first release has been released on May 2020, along with the last one of the 2.10 train. And hopefully very soon we will also release 3.1 version, which contains very new interesting features. If you are using an old version of GeoNode, we strongly suggest to upgrade. The upgrade from a 2.10 version is not very difficult. The model are mostly the same. So with few steps, it is possible to easily keep the old datasets and templates and update GeoNode to the new version. We strongly suggest to update because Python 2 is not developed anymore as long as Django 1. So if you want to be sure that your service are up to date with the latest fixes, security fixes in particular, you need absolutely to upgrade to the new version. Other than this, if you want to have the latest functionalities, you will find that only from GeoNode 3.0 and above. So the development on GeoNode 2.10 is not supported anymore. So what's new? Okay, and then the next slides, you will find 3 labels on the bottom of the slides, which basically represents the first one, more or less the main sponsors of the feature that has been developed. In the middle, who actively developed the feature. And in the last one, the version that holds the feature. Okay, so the first thing, as I said before, in GeoNode 3.0, we have finally an upgrade to Python 3. In particular, we are supporting Python 3.7 and above, and currently we are supporting Django 2.13. those both versions of Python and Django also had a lot of security fixes and performance improvements. The current version of GeoNode 3.0 and most probably 3.1, it is officially supporting GeoServer 2.16.2. But they are compliant also with GeoServer 2.17 and most probably with GeoServer 2.18 when it will be released. But officially we are supporting this version here. So even here it is important to update because GeoServer, which is the default geospatial server that can be plugged into GeoNode, has a lot of important fixes and very, very interesting and cool improvements. You can find some of them here in the slides. But if you look into the official GeoServer blog, there is a release note that depicts and shows you all the fixes and improvements available on the new GeoServer versions. By the way, today has been released also the GeoServer 2.16.4, and in the next few days we will build GeoServer package based on that release that also can be used by GeoNode 3.0 and 3.1. In this version of GeoServer, there are also very, very important updates to 3 community plugins of GeoServer that GeoNode uses in order to implement all its functionalities, in particular the backup and restore, the How-To security subsystem, and GeoFence security subsystems. There are a lot of improvements for the internationalization and documentation of GeoNode. We are continuously improving the internationalization. We have almost 90% coverage for the main 5 languages, but we recently start adding more languages. As an instance, there are already available Portuguese and Spanish, but also there are work in progress for Hebrew and other Arabic languages. The documentation, the main documentation for the master branch has been completely revised and updated. And there are sections that not only simplify a lot the installation process, which was a bit confusing in the old versions, but also provide very, very interesting sections and a few workshops that allows you to customize your version of GeoNode. So I kindly suggest you to take a look at the most recent documentation of GeoNode. The default JS client provided by GeoNode, it's officially MapStore 2. That, as you can see from those snapshots, provides some advanced functionalities. So it's not only a simple mapping client, but it also allows you to plug in some custom widgets on the map, like charts. It allows you to directly edit vectorial data from the user interface. And there is also a style editor integrated along with some predefined template for the styles that allows you to style your overlays easily directly from the web interface. There have been a lot of improvements on the Docker installation, which is currently the suggested way to install GeoNode. This is because GeoNode, it's a complex system. It consists of several services, which are usually not that easy to install manually and configure by themselves. So we invested a lot of time into this Docker mechanism that basically has some automatic scripts that allows you to automatically build the images and deploy the services accordingly to your preferences and your settings, your custom settings. By the way, in the Docker installations, we also added some more improvements that allows us to include directly in the setup some of the most advanced and recent features of GeoNode. As an instance, with the Docker installations, you have already integrated into your system a monitoring capability that allows you to monitor the performances of the system. So as you can see from the slides, there is a page that allows you to basically have a quick look of the hardware performances, but also of the software performances. So the average response time, for example, from your OGC services, and also an estimate of the number of requests coming from different locations around the world. There is also the possibility to go into the details of some analytics, so you can inspect the throughput and see how basically GeoNode has been used and how your instance responded along the time. Also, it is included directly in the installation some of the new functionalities that are included into what we call GeoNode contrib applications, which are a sort of plugins of GeoNode that can be enabled and disabled through some settings. So as an instance, you can enable the favorites functionalities that allows users basically to create a favorite list of layers and maps and documents available into GeoNode, so they can quickly retrieve their favorite overlays directly without going through the whole catalog. There is the possibility to enable this support for EXIF metadata for document images. So basically, whenever you add a JPEG image to the GeoNode documents, GeoNode documents are basically non-geospatial datasets that can be uploaded into the system and linked to the geospatial resources. GeoNode is able to automatically read the EXIF metadata and show the metadata directly through the user interface. There is a possibility to enable this create empty layer functionality, which basically allows you to create from scratch a vectorial layer. So you can define the layer name, the title, the geometry type, polygons, point, lines, etc., and add your custom attributes. So at the point you have basically an empty layer, a template of a vectorial layer, through the data editor of MapStore, you can start adding a feature to the layer directly from the GUI. The get capabilities for single layers basically allows you to ask to GeoNode to generate an OGC compliant WMS get capabilities for a single layer instead of the whole catalog. This is particularly useful if you start having thousands of layers available on your instance. The XSL renderer for metadata, it is the possibility to basically apply an XML style sheet to the layers and maps metadata and show a rendered, an HTML rendered layout of the metadata available for the layer or geospatial datasets. The original datasets download link, which is a link that allows you to basically provide to the users the original dataset that has been uploaded into GeoNode. So not a portrayal, not a representation, not a conversion done through the OGC services, but the real original data that have been uploaded into GeoNode. The Docker installations also already enables automatically and configures RabbitMQ broker's messaging system along with Celery workers, which basically allows to execute some maintenance task asynchronously. That means that, as an instance, all the analytics tasks for getting the usage statistics and other stuff are executed asynchronously, so that the system is not overwhelmed from this additional logic. And this allows us also to use the GeoNode analytics and centralized dashboard Kanban. Basically, this is part of the monitoring system of GeoNode, but it is, let's say, improved and provides some more information and very, very granular and specific details on how your data has been accessed from the users and how it has been used. And for, as an instance, it is, let's say, similar to the Google Analytics, even if much more simpler. It allows you to understand how many anonymous sessions have been created into your system. So basically, how much non-registered users are accessing your datasets, but also how many registered users are using the geospatial layers and which geospatial layers they are using and from when. Also, if you are able to configure accordingly to the documentation a Kibana dashboard, GeoNode is able to automatically package and send the logs to the dashboard, so you can create very cool filters and charts to monitor very well your instance. There is also the possibility to activate and configure, I would say, easily held up authentication. So held up authentication basically allows GeoNode to authenticate your user against an held up user and automatically retrieve the groups that the user belongs to and map them directly to the GeoNode instance. There are also a couple of tasks, Celery tasks, that asynchronously keep the users in sync with the LDAP service. We included into the new version a lot of performance optimization, so you should find the new version of GeoNode 3.0 and 3.1 much more fast and stable than the previous ones. There is fully working full backup and restore of GeoNodes that allows you to create full backups of all the data and also customization that you have done onto your instance. The backup is now able also to dump an MD5 hash related to the final archive, and also when you start executing a backup or restore, the script automatically puts GeoNode into a read-only state. That means that while the backup and restore is running, the users won't be able to upload new datasets or modify their datasets. So GeoNode will be, let's say, in a sort of read-only mode. This modality, the read-only modality, can be also manually enabled by the administrator through the Django administration user interface. So the administrator can check the read-only mode and automatically transform the instance into a read-only instance for standard users. On version 3.0, we introduced this new functionality that are geospatial security restrictions, also called geolimits. Basically, when on the set permission tab, you have the possibility to physically draw or upload a shapefile that represents security permissions spatially applied to your datasets. So basically, you can define for each user or group which sections of the layer they are able to access or not. So whenever you apply those limits and you log in with the user that has limited, the user won't be able physically to access the prohibited limits. So as you can see in this example, the user Fabiani will be able to see only certain parts of the feature datasets. There have been also improvements to the remote services. In particular, one very important improvement is the possibility to benefit of the GeoServer WMS cascade layers. So basically, you can also link now a WMS service which does not support natively the projections of GeoNode. It will be basically transformed into a GeoServer WMS cascade, and GeoServer will automatically transform the layer into another projection. This is also a new functionality which will be introduced on 3.1 version of GeoNode, the get feature info templating. Quickly, when you add a layer into a map through the get feature info OGC requests, you are able to ask to the geospatial server to provide information about the data in a certain point, a certain location of the map. GeoNode implements this new functionality that basically automatically injects an HTML template, which is customizable, into the get feature info template. So basically, you are able to draw the output of the get feature info template. So from now on, you won't only get back strings from the geospatial server, but you can, as an instance, render directly images or video or audio streams directly into the map by applying an HTML template. And there are two ways to enable this functionality. The easiest one is to simply select the type of the attribute that is available on GeoNode. So basically, whenever GeoNode renders that specific value, accordingly to the type that you selected, it will transform the content of the attribute into an image, HTML tag or a video HTML tag or audio or something else, or a more advanced functionalities which allows you to physically draw through this WYSIWYG text editor an HTML template, so you can not only draw the template but provide some specific keywords that allows you to render the content how you prefer. There are a lot of improvements other than the one that I just described until now available on the version 3. You can find a detailed list of the fixes and improvements into the official blog of GeoNode 3 release that is shown in the link here. Okay, what's cooking? What's we are working on and hopefully make available before the end of this year, hopefully. Improvements to the styler. This is almost ready. We should have the first version in a few weeks, hopefully. So we are planning to add to the Map Store client an advanced styler, which has completely reviewed, that now allows you also to create on the fly the vector and raster data classifications. So you can classify your datasets and apply a color ramp to the datasets in order to automatically create a nice style. Also, the possibility to add markers to the style and some other advanced styling options. So stay tuned because we are going to create a GeoNode improvement request in the next few days. Integrated workflow. This is something that we have discussed since a long time. Basically, the uploader available from the user interface, it's very limited now. So we are analyzing currently the possibilities to attach some asynchronous upload workflows to GeoNode that not only allows you to more efficiently and reliably upload datasets into GeoNode, but also to define additional steps during the upload process. So basically, as an instance, if you want to apply some pre-processing to your geospatial datasets, you can do that by modifying the steps of the upload workflow. Or as an instance, if you want to somehow apply different permissions accordingly to the different roles of the users, you will be able to define accordingly to the workflow how those permissions must be set by GeoNode accordingly to certain conditions. GeoStories integration. This is something that it's almost already available in Map Store. So the possibility to create GeoStories, and by adding also media links to the maps. So we really would like to enable this functionality on GeoNode also. By also having the possibility to link the GeoNode documents to those media that you can show into your story. Of course, the GeoStory also will have an integrated visual editor that allows you to edit your GeoStory. This is also something that it's missing on GeoNode, or at least it's not well documented. An official REST API for layers, documents, and maps Currently, there are REST API that allows you to access the datasets of GeoNode in read-only mode. So we plan to transform those APIs in real CRUD operations. So being able to modify and delete resources directly by using the APIs, not only the user interface. Of course, cleaner authentication support for the APIs, the possibility to maybe to implement the Open API 3.0 specification, and also documenting officially those API so that other systems can benefit of the REST APIs of GeoNode. Finally, the possibility of creating a real single-page application for GeoNode. So right now, the user interface of GeoNode, it's a bit old-fashioned. So it's like a very old content management system when in order to complete an operation, you need to basically physically change the page, click on a button and move to another page. So our idea, and we already have some mock-ups that describe our idea, it would be to create a simplified UI, interactive UI, that in a single page allows you to basically access quickly and easily all the functionalities that are now available on GeoNode. Okay, finally, we are almost at the end of the presentation. We have users list and development list where we are answering questions. We always need testers and people that help us to identify security issues and provides us ideas on how to improve GeoNode in all the ways possible. There are the possibility to create GitHub issues describing the problems, and usually the community is able to, at least for the issues, to intervene and fix the issues very quickly. Also, we need help to improve the documentation. In most cases, the documentation is not yet complete. Most of the documentation it's poor, so we really need help in order to improve those parts of the documentation. And of course, also translations of GeoNode, review, translation, and internationalization. So if you have resources, please jump in. To get involved with the developers and the community, there is also the possibility to sign in into a Gitter channel. Of the official Gitter channel is geonode.general, where basically all the core developers and PSC members are actively present, so can respond to you in almost real time. And if you identify some issues, please use GitHub. In case you stumble into a vulnerability, before spreading the security vulnerability loudly out to the whole world, please contact directly the project steering committee, and let's discuss the problem in a private thread so that the already in place system won't be exposed to possible attacks. Thank you very much. This ends the presentation on my side.
Good, thank you, Alessio, very much. And then right now we are open for questions. And while we do that, and please write your questions in the Q&A, so should be a very easy icon that you can find, Q&A. I saw there was a question about Windows, but while we do that, I'm going to also start a poll which provide us some feedback about this webinar, so for us to learn more about how we perform and how we can improve in the future. So please go ahead. Okay, I see the questions are popping up. So, I mean, members of the PSC, Giovanni, Alessio, Francesco, please, respond us at your best convenience.
Okay, just a moment. I'm trying to find the window.
I can read it if you want, if you cannot find it.
Okay, I find it.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is it possible to add multidimensional data, image mosaic and CDF? Well, not directly through the user interface. Through the user interface, it is possible to upload vectorial data with a temporal dimension, actually. And the GeoNode will be able to automatically provide a time slider. For multidimensional data, you need to configure the data in GeoServer first, and then you can publish the layers into GeoNode. So it is not something that, let's say, can be done easily, but standard user, but it can be done by an expert user. Can external GeoServer instances be incorporated into GeoNode? Yes, but you need to configure the GeoServer instance with some plugins. Currently, we provide a precompiled WAR, which is basically a standard version of GeoServer with some plugins already enabled and configured. So you can link a GeoServer and let's say an instance of GeoServer whenever you are able to add those plugins to your instance and configure them accordingly. You can also link a vanilla GeoServer to GeoNode, but in that case, it will be in, let's say, read-only mode, and it won't benefit of all the GeoNode functionalities. Would it make sense to use MapStore to a standalone WebGIS instead of GeoNode? Yes, of course, it is possible. Let's say GeoNode allows you to manage your datasets and, as I said before, expose the datasets through the OGC endpoints. So you can connect to GeoNode any GIS client, included MapStore 2 standalone. Of course, you need some development by yourself, and in that case, the cons are that it won't be fully integrated with GeoNode. So as an instance, it won't be possible to benefit of functionalities like the get feature info template customized by GeoNode, or it won't be possible to store the maps directly into GeoNode. So you will have maps that will be stored into your MapStore 2 session, but they won't be saved into GeoNode as maps. The pros are that you are able to customize your standalone version of MapStore 2 with any plugins that is available on MapStore 2. So if you also have development capabilities, you can build your own GIS clients in order to host your maps.
Can I add one more thing, Alessio?
Yeah, sure.
Just to clarify, MapStore 2 is basically a front-end framework, but it might be misleading in some cases because it also can be deployed with its own backend, which is so-called the GeoStore backend. So there are two ways of using MapStore outside of GeoNode, which is either as a framework to build your own client with your own backend, or using its bundled Java backend. It's a Java application. So what we are doing with GeoNode is offering a new backend to MapStore too. And in general, either if you have your own backend, which I suppose it's the APIs and the functionalities to store the expected configurations from App Store, you can do that. Otherwise, it's better if you use one of the backends that we are currently supporting, which is its own GeoStore or GeoNode.
Okay.
So before you go to the next questions, I see we are almost at noon, but I will leave the webinar open 15 minutes more so we can have a good discussion about these interesting questions. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I see there are a lot of questions. I don't know if we are able to reply to all those questions. Is that possible to integrate Jupyter Hub server? Honestly, I don't know. In theory, yes, but yeah, Francesco.
Well, Alessio, I think Jupyter Hub and Jupyter Notebook can be considered like an external client like QGIS. So probably you can benefit to see how cookies can be fetch layers and maps from GeoNode and use the same authentication method like basic authentication and so on. I think you can just start a notebook and call the API for a basic authentication, and then from there you can certainly fetch layers and use all the capabilities that cookies can actually already use for from a GeoNode instance.
Yeah, the problem, as I said before during the presentation, is that right now GeoNode exposes read-only APIs, so you at most will be able to read.
Obviously, to just to fetch and use the layers, but not to,
to modify them or
to modify, the layers.
Yeah, probably when we are able to start implemented and exposing more APIs, also possibly some processing capabilities, you will be able also to modify your datasets through an external hub like Jupyter or something else.
Yeah.
Is there already a guide for updating from GeoNode? I would say not an official one, because it really depends on how you installed your system. So seeing the old version had a lot of ways to install the system. So let's say we are planning to deploy a guide to at least update the Docker instance of GeoNode from 2.10. For older version, it's quite difficult. So for the moment, I would say let's see what people ask, and then along with people and the specific use cases, we will hopefully able to improve the documentation for the different use cases. Okay, so when using GeoLimits on layers, what happens to feature with intersects the limit geometry? Will the outside part will be cut? Yes, currently the GeoLimit basically for vectorial data are inclusion only. So if there is a feature that intersect the geolimit, it won't be. It won't. Oh no, sorry, the opposite. If the feature will intersect the geolimit, they will be included. The full geometry will be included. This is different for rasters. In that case, you will have a real cut. So the raster data will be cutted exactly accordingly to the geolimit shape. So is it possible to add the multi-layers? I would say yes. So let me read the question. Is it possible to add multi-layers of polygons, and when zoom in, some disappear to show the smaller ones? This will help for overlapping problems. But this is possible by correctly defining the styles, basically. This is already possible with the current style editor. It will be more easy to do that with the advanced style editor. So in that case, you can define rules based on the scale denominator. So you will be able to define at what zoom level some geometries will be shown and which one will be hidden. Can we use GeoNode in more than one server? The question is not really clear. So if you are speaking about clustering, GeoNode, I would say not really, unless you are an expert DevOps. This is because GeoNode, architecturally speaking, is not yet enterprise ready. So it will need some more development in order to be considered a real enterprise application. I find hard to find documentation on how to deploy GeoNode using Docker on HTTPS. There is documentation about this. We added recently a section in the latest GeoNode documentation. So you have to search for the master branch documentation. There is a basic installation section that describes exactly this topic. So how to deploy GeoServer through Docker and how to enable HTTPS on GeoNode. What about single sign-on and user management? Okay, so this is a bit generic question. Currently, GeoNode can act both like how to provider and client. Speaking about GeoNode and GeoServer, they already are deployed and they already use single sign-on. So when you sign in into GeoNode, your session through the access token is automatically exported to GeoServer and vice versa. Generally speaking, it is possible to attach to GeoNode external authentication system, in particular how to an OpenID Ready One. We already did experiment with system like Keycloak or WSO2 or something else. So you basically can configure and allow GeoNode to log in by using an external single sign-on system, and also GeoServer using the same provider. So yes, but you need to know how to do that. So it's not something that can be easily activated by a few settings. What is the default metadata client that come with GeoNode? speaking about the client, GeoNode implements the user interface by itself. If you are speaking about metadata server, the default one is by CSW. It is possible to link also GeoNetwork as a metadata service, but it is a long time that no one tries to do that. So it is possible that that there are some bugs on the integration with GeoNetwork. However, it's possible because I know that there are systems that are using GeoNetwork as a backend for the metadata. Makes sense to have in GeoNode instance and options for offline edit options or in maps for specific layers. Well, it depends what you mean with offline. I would say yes. Let's say if with offline you are speaking about local layers, it's already like that. If you are speaking about caching the layers on GeoNode and then pushing the updates into GeoServer when the system goes online again, this is something that GeoNode does not support currently. It would be a very, very nice improvements, of course, but it's also quite hard to develop. It will require a lot of development, at least at the current state. We could be a strategy to recommend to upgrade from GeoNode 2 to GeoNode 3. Do you recommend starting from 3 and introducing custom changing on top? Well, the good strategy, at least the strategy that I use typically to upgrade from GeoNode 2 to GeoNode 3 is to backup the database and the geospatial data there, and then link a new version of GeoNode 3 to that database, and then fixing the migration along the time. Usually that works. It needs just few steps in order to fix the migrations, but I currently was able to successfully upgrade, I would say quite easily, some version of GeoNode 2 to GeoNode 3. I will spend some time to improve the documentation in order to add a standard use case starting from 2.10 version of GeoNode to upgrade to 3.0 version of GeoNode. Any reference to the multi-site capabilities? Not yet, unfortunately. Because there are no fundings currently to develop a real multi-tenancy version of GeoNode. And you can try to enable the multi-sites, but it's, I would say, it's not real multi-tenancy because they still need just one instance of GeoServer, and they will only able you to eventually render different layout for different users. So if we speak of real multi-tenancy for GeoNode, it will require a lot of development, but currently there are no resources to do that. At least no one expressed some interest in that. When using GeoLimits on layers, what happens if, okay, I already read it. Does GeoNode support for GeoPackages? Not natively. You can deploy maybe GeoPackages into GeoServer and then create layers into GeoNode. This is possible. It is not possible to upload GeoPackages directly from GeoNode. This is something that won't be too much difficult to implement in GeoNode right now. But again, there were not much requests from the community to implement these functionalities. So currently no one ever worked on this capability. It is recommended to have both the GIS database and GeoNode database on the same server. I would say no. It is in a production system. It is always better to have different servers and possibly to have a redundant database in order to avoid in order to improve the resiliency of the server. Since GeoNode heavily depend on the database, if the database has some problem for some reason, all the system will stop work. So I strongly recommend to deploy the database on another server. I added an extra topic to the metadata categories and assigned a FA class. When assigning a layer to the category, I can see the extra category I created. How can I update the home page? Okay, currently the home page is static. So the only way to update the home page is to manually edit the basic template of GeoNode. It is not difficult to have this dynamically rendered from GeoNode, but no one ever worked on that. So I would suggest you to open a ticket, a feature request on GeoNode GitHub repository, and let's see if some developer will be able to implement that useful functionality. To have dynamically rendered topic categories on the home page. Okay, and so next question, how to make GeoNode point to a customized version of MapStore 2? Is there a documentation for that? No, even because it's not really possible. The only possible way is to fetch geospatial layers to MapStore from an external GeoNode service in read-only mode. So that means that every map that you will save on MapStore 2 on your instance of MapStore 2 won't be saved back into GeoNode, because the only way to do that is to use the integrated version of MapStore 2 with GeoNode. Can you repeat your comment about GeoNode and production use, or was it limited to a specific configuration? Don't remember exactly the comment. Probably the one about the database. As I said before, I strongly recommend to deploy the database on a separate server instead of using the same instance for GeoNode, and also GeoServer on a separate server.
And probably, Alessio, we can say that there is a specific section on the documentation for having a production ready GeoNode instance. So
okay.
yeah, they can read the documentation and find the specific section for production.
I see related to the same question, ready, not ready for production. That was the question. No, I was saying not ready for multi-tenancy, not for production. Multi-tenancy means having the GeoNode having the possibility to change the layout and the interface of GeoNode accordingly to the users that logins into the system. So the system is ready for production, but it's not ready for multi-tenancy. I would like to know how to use the GeoPackage format for raster data within GeoNode. Is it recommended? This is a complex question, actually. I would say it is not possible to use it easily. So you cannot simply get a GeoPackage and upload it into GeoNode. it is not supported right now. It is recommended because GeoPackage is a good geospatial format. But the only way to do that until now is to deploy the GeoPackage into GeoServer first, and then create a layer into GeoNode linked to GeoServer. So at this stage, the only way to use GeoPackages is by uploading them into GeoServer first.
So, but you can also use it as an output format with a WFS, is that correct?
Yes, but GeoNode does not expose any link to create the GeoPackage output format right now. So it would be possible with some development, but it is not supported natively right now.
Okay.
So basically, there is no development that officially supports GeoPackage input-output directly from GeoNode. Is there any progression on key clock? Well, I would say yes. I mean, it's already possible to configure and link GeoNode and GeoServer to key clock, but it is something that it's not for standard users. I mean, you need to know very well both the systems, GeoNode and key clock. It's not very hard. We already created some instances that are able to log in by using Keyclock. But as far as I know, there is no official guide into the documentation to do that. We can add a section eventually into the documentation. So please open a ticket and let's see if we can add some instructions on how to do that. Does GeoNode support by GPU render? GeoNode relies fully into GeoServer. So whenever you are able to configure your GeoServer instance to use a native renderer, yes. So it is not supported by default. Well, actually, the Docker instance, I don't remember if already supports it, but it should deploy on GeoServer the Java Martin renderer, which is higher, faster than the native one, only for 2D. Regarding the question of customizing something of the Mapstore 2 version inside GeoNode, is it possible to make GeoNode point to a customized version of Django? Yeah, is it possible? It is possible to customize the Django GeoNode Mapstore client by using a customized version of Mapstore 2. You must be a developer. I mean, you need to know how to develop the plugins in Mapstore 2 and how to enable those plugins into the GeoNode Mapstore client. So it's not something, again, that can be done easily by a non-developer, I would say. There is a section in the documentation that we added recently that allows you to enable the Django GeoNode Mapstore client into debug mode. So you can basically, well, not debug mode, the development mode. So you can basically start the client and develop Mapstore 2 plugin at runtime. That said, whenever you are happy, you need to package your custom version of the Django GeoNode Mapstore client and include into your distribution manually. So I would say it's not really an easy things to do. You need to know very well how Python Django works and how MapStore works. Does GeoNode support GeoServer layer groups? Yes, but they cannot be created directly from the GeoNode user interface. So again, you need to create the layer groups into GeoServer and then run a management command in order to show the layer groups into GeoNode. So there is, let's say that there is no way to configure them directly from the GeoNode standard interface. You need to configure them in GeoServer first.
Okay, Alessio, thank you very much, and thank you all for this good discussion. We're going to make available the recording and the presentation, the slides, later this week. If you have any other questions that you were not able to provide in this webinar, you know how to get to the users GeoNode list. So please interact with them that way, or via GitHub, or via the Gitter channel. We really appreciate all your comments coming together, and hope to see you in the next webinar. Thank you, Alessio, very much.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, all you have a great day. Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.